Hello everybody and welcome to the Moto Mill. We've got a pretty cool machine here today. It's a little dusty, it's a little crusty, but it is Yamaha's first motocrosser. Well, debatably. Anyway guys, this is a 1972 Yamaha dt2mx. The reason I say that it's debatable whether this is Yamaha's first real motocross machine or not is due to the fact that Yamaha dt1, the bike that this machine got its name from essentially, came out in 1968, and they did have great success off-road. Now, they were truthfully an enduro, basically stripped down for the motocross scene, upgrade them with the Yamaha GYT kit, and in fact, they would end up coming with that stock later on. You could order them that way. You could get the enduro or the motocross version. But those machines still had things like flipped up seats, still had a big steel oil tank on it. Now, this bike did have oil injection originally, which was deleted on it, but it was still a little cleaner system than was used on the earlier DT1s. And the other big thing of controversy would probably come from the YZ crowd. They would say that dt2mx is still truthfully an enduro-based machine, and if they want to say that, then I would say that their YZ is as well. The reason I would say that is because the engine generations are the same. The big departure from this machine and YZ would be the lightness. They would take this bike and they would put it on a big diet to make it into the YZ. You'd end up with chromoly frame, lots of magnesium, including down here on the hubs. So you'll notice that on this bike here, you've got the aluminum front hub and you've got that shoulder DID front wheel. These are kind of copies of a cross. These would be different than the steel wheels that the earlier DTs were using. They were just using chrome ones with steel rims. Slightly different hubs as well. The YZ would have magnesium ones and would have also the shaved fork lowers. The chromoly frame was probably the largest difference though, because I've had a few of these down to bare frame before, and at the same time I had another chromoly frame and I had my Yamaha Profab frame. That Profab frame probably, honest to God, saves 30 pounds or something like that off these bikes. The difference is like almost silly. When you pick the two up next to each other, you almost hurt yourself picking up the stock Yamaha one, while in comparison that Profab one is ultra light. Now you'll see this bike does have that cool pipe on it. Snakes its way through the frame here. Obviously the front here you can tell has been re-welded or re-brazed a few times. Those were known to be points of weakness. I think a lot of RT2 and DT2MXs took damage there. You'll also notice that this machine here has a pretty cool ProTech period correct little chain tensioner. Nice aluminum rear sprocket on the back. It seems to me like this bike has a lot of originality, but I want to say that it was probably cleaned up in the late 90s or early 2000s. You know, you can see things like it's got this vintage iron Yamaha bar pad on it. That's pretty cool. You got a Magura Whirlpool throttle, 314. Scott's grips. These tanks were just a little bit different than the Yamaha MX tanks that came on MX 250 and 360. Slightly different shape. Still using Yamaha's Thermoflow shocks. A lot of people didn't like these back in the day, and for good reason. In recent years, I've actually kind of bought up a heck of a lot of them at swap meets and things like that because they are rebuildable. And since people didn't like them, they were going darn cheap. And I've actually figured out how to get them to work pretty darn decent. You can see that the one on this side was originally mounted over on that other side. It's got a lot of chain rash on it. Probably at the point where it's darn near leaking out of that body, but I don't mind too much. I've got several more bodies to replace that. Once again, you can see that shouldered rear wheel. Big upgrade from the earlier DT1s was the fact that these bikes got cleated foot pegs, if you can call them that. The one thing you got to watch for on these machines is at some point the Kickstarter, because it uses that foot peg as a stop, will end up kind of busting that clip off, and you'll end up losing your foot peg upon kicking it in the pits. I've seen some people have some pretty wild setups, and Arma having them wire tied on and all sorts of different things just to avoid that happening. Now, this machine's got some cool features on it too that really help it out. So originally, the ignition system on these, you can't really see it too well from this side or even the other side because it's tucked up under the tank. The Japanese ignitions in the early 70s, CDI ones, left a heck of a lot to be desired. The points ignition that came on the bikes before this ended up giving them some kickback issues, especially on the bigger 360s. RT1s are known to break people's legs. But this bike's got a moto plat on it, which is a heck of a mod. It really brings this bike together. The way that it is just so crisp and so nice. I mean, not only is it jetted good, but it's finally got an ignition curve like it should have deserved from the factory. So that helps it. And this bike really, motor-wise, is almost as powerful as some of the mid-70s offerings. I wouldn't be too terribly surprised to learn that this bike's got some extensive port work or maybe a newer cylinder, because it makes ferocious power. It's a little too heavy to be truly Arma competitive, so even though I've owned it now for 10 or 15 years or something like that, I've never even taken this bike to the races. I've always used it just as a backup bike. That's why nothing on it's very nice at all. And, well, I say backup bike, I'm sorry, I put that wrong. Really, I've used this bike kind of as a practice bike around the yard. I always thought that if I could get used to a bike that had worse suspension and was a little heavier, when I hopped on the actual race bike, I'd be doing a lot better. And especially because this machine still has power to be competitive, you can get used to things. Now, I'm going to show you up under here. You can see it's got a really cool fiberglass inner fender. That's basically the airbox assembly back there. It's a big one-piece unit. And here too, you've got that fiberglass seat pan. That's just showing how this bike was stepping away from the Yamaha DT1s using that big clip-on seat. But it does have the original seat cover, even though it's starting to get pretty darn rough. This one will need to be replaced at some point soon. But if you guys like this bike and you want to see its big brother, the 360, come out, we can do that. Don't have an dt2mx at the moment. I actually have let all of those go, but I do have an MX 360. Personally, I would take the DT2 or RT2MX over the MXs. I mean, maybe that's just personal preference. But anyway, guys, this is a pretty cool, pretty original little Yamaha here. And we'll make some more content with it in the future. Thank you, everybody.